Why do screenwriters feel like executives ruin their screenplays or ideas?
Well, that's a good question. However, I am listening to that new book that just came out about HBO, and it's an interesting thing because a lot of the testimonies from the writers are very positive about how they're being supported. So I do think that, anytime you get a note, it's hard. You have to internalize, you have to assimilate that into your psyche in some way. And notes are not, everybody wants their thing to be great right out of the box, and it almost never is. It always takes work. So I think no matter if you're getting it from your writers group or you're getting it from an executive, you're gonna push back on it because you obviously turned in the thing that you thought was ready. And then to get the no, it's not ready, there's something that needs to be done. That's like, it's a little, it's a little hard to stomach. But I do think there's a whole line of rhetoric out there about bad executives, and a lot of the bad executives are they demand their notes to be taken. I think the better executives try to, again, help you find your path, your own path. That's why I think, if you're even if you're not an executive and you're giving notes, giving a note in a form of a question will really help ease the pain. And also, you should also, be cognizant of the fact that maybe somebody doesn't want to take the note. If they've taken the spirit of the note as opposed to the exact note, and you get the point across, then, it should be all good. But I do think that there's been a history of people who give notes that seem to unravel things as opposed to helping them. And if they don't have a fix for it, that's even worse. Even if you say, hey, this is the bad version, then at least it's a little something. So there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. But I don't think anybody willingly goes out of their way to give terrible notes. There may be people who are just not equipped. They don't know enough. They haven't heard enough pitches, or they haven't been on the pitching side and know how hard it is. So there are those people who probably shouldn't be giving notes. But hopefully, if you're in a network and you're skilled enough to be sitting in that room, you should be giving fairly good notes.
What does the spirit of the note mean? Sorry to interrupt.
You mean the note under the note?
Yeah, what is the spirit? You said the spirit of the note?
Oh, the spirit of the note? Sure. So, let's just say you have read my script and you give me a very, very particular note about a particular line. Well, the line might not be the problem. But what you're tapping into is there's something not working about that scene or that moment. Maybe I haven't earned that moment yet. And your note may not be the right identifier of that problem. But if I take a step back and go, well, what is she trying to tell me? Maybe I can fix it a different way. Maybe it needs to be a different scene. Maybe everything's out of place. Remember how I said in the beginning, I took a script, I completely unraveled it, and then I put it back together again, and it worked so much better. Well, the note was just go deeper. He didn't give me a do it this way or this particular way, but he could have. And if he'd done that, and really the note was just go deeper, then I would have had to have looked under that. I would have had to look under, well, why is this not working for him? And take the spirit of the note, which was deeper. Earn those moments. Give me more character. Follow the emotion. And so sometimes people don't know how to say that, and they give a very specific, here's a line problem, or I don't love this scene, or I'm getting bored, or whatever. But they don't understand that they're not getting bored because the story is boring. They're getting bored because they're not emotionally driven by the story. You have to understand let me figure out what they're really trying to say, why this really isn't working for them.
So the spirit is just telling you there's just something off,
Yeah.
or go, they're not giving you the exact.
Look over here. Yeah.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. How many emails does an executive get every day?
I averaged about 200 emails a day when I was at HBO. I'm going to say easily 200. And some of that is incoming stuff, agents, managers. Some of that is catching up with other executives that I know. Some of that was internal. Hey, we've got a meeting, or here are notes on a script or whatever. So it's a tonnage of things that come at you constantly that you have to prioritize and get to the things that matter. You might have a meeting coming up you need to address. You might have just done something you need to do an action item. So you just never know. And every day is different. Every day is just slightly different, where there's a new fire to be put out.
Why do screenwriters think executives are the enemy?
Well, I think just that goes back to your notes question, which is, the executive is the person who delivers the notes, number one. They deliver the passes, number two. They're the people who say no. And I think a lot of executives have gotten the rap for being risk averse and not taking chances. And sometimes that's true. And sometimes it's a factor that's way out of our control. So, but we are always the ones who deliver that news. So it's a lot of different things. And I think the whole process of Hollywood is so random and arbitrary. And I was just thinking about how, we just saw Coda win Best Picture. And in the speech, the director talked about how hard it was to get the film made. And you just go, in the normal world, you can't do that movie as a big studio movie. They don't do those anymore. You have to go the indie route. So imagine all the things she had to do in order to make that thing go, or she and the producers and the writer and all of those things where people were constantly saying no. And all the people who said no right now are kicking themselves because it was a yes movie and it desperately needed to be made. And it touched so many people and it changed so many things. And yet all those people said no. It only took one person to say yes. Thankfully, it's out there in the world. But again, think about how many other places and other movies that don't get made because someone doesn't think that it's right for them or the right time, or they don't have the budget, whatever it is, whatever the reasons that they're not going to push the button. And how many things have to really be squeak by. There's a whole thing about The Godfather. Have you seen there's like a whole thing about The Godfather out now, about how The Godfather was made. There's like a lot of threads on Twitter, but then there's this movie that's coming out about it. And you think about all of the ways that could have gone south. And it probably wouldn't have made it. And yet it's like the most celebrated movie of all time. And you go, if it's just by some sort of magic that it became something. And I think they even said at one point that the book hadn't even been finished at the time that they were starting this movie thing. So it's kind of crazy. And you think about if you go on that thing, there's like a Netflix show about, I don't know, the history of how things got made. And I think they do Dirty Dancing and they do Die Hard. And they all have the same story, which is there is no way in the world this movie should have gotten made. It should have crashed and burned a million different times, and those are the things that make it. So somebody had to champion it. Somebody had to say yes. But a lot of people said no. So I think executives in general, like it's just a miracle of modern science that anything actually gets made and turns out good, because there's just 1,000 ways that it could, end up Heaven's Gate, I guess, right?